I've always been drawn to the unknown, the stories that defy logic, the places that don't appear on any map. That's why, when I heard about the town of Black Hollow, I knew I had to see it for myself. What I found there was beyond anything I could have imagined. This is the story of the vanishing town, and the mystery that still haunts me to this day. It started with a rumor. I was at a diner in a small town, nursing a cup of coffee and listening to the locals talk. They spoke in hushed tones about a place called Black Hollow, a town that had vanished overnight, leaving nothing but empty buildings and unanswered questions. "It's not on any map," one of the men said, his voice low. "But if you know where to look, you can find it. Just don't stay too long. Folks who do, well, they don't come back." I was intrigued. As a journalist, I'd covered my fair share of strange stories, but this was different. This was a mystery that defied explanation. I decided to investigate. The next morning, I set out with nothing but a backpack, a camera, and a vague set of directions. The road was narrow and overgrown, the trees pressing in on either side. After hours of driving, I finally saw it, a sign, weathered and barely legible, that read, "Welcome to Black Hollow." Black Hollow was unlike any place I'd ever seen. The buildings were old, their paint peeling and their windows shattered. The streets were empty, the silence broken only by the sound of the wind whistling through the trees. It was as if the town had been frozen in time. I parked my car and stepped out, my camera in hand. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground crunched beneath my feet as I walked. I explored the town, taking photos and notes, but there was no sign of life, no people, no animals, nothing. Then, I heard it, a faint, melodic hum, like a song being sung just out of reach. I followed the sound, my heart pounding, until I reached the town square. In the center was a fountain, its water still and black. The hum was coming from there. I approached the fountain, my camera at the ready. That's when I saw it, a figure, standing in the shadows of the town hall. It was tall and thin, its body shrouded in darkness. I called out, but it didn't respond. It just stood there, watching me. I tried to shake the feeling of unease, but it clung to me like a second skin. I continued to explore, but the town seemed to shift and change around me. Streets that had been straight were now twisted, buildings that had been empty were now filled with shadows. By midday, I realized I was lost. The town was a maze, and every path led me deeper into its heart. The hum grew louder, more insistent, and I felt a cold, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. That's when I saw them, figures, standing in the windows of the buildings. They were tall and gaunt, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. They watched me as I walked, their whispers filling the air. "You shouldn't have come here," one of them said, its voice a chorus of agony and rage. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my chest. The figures followed, their forms flickering and merging like smoke. I didn't stop until I reached the town square, where I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The square was different now. The fountain was gone, replaced by a stone altar, stained with what looked like dried blood. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the whispers were deafening. I knew I had to get out of there, but my legs wouldn't move. The figures surrounded me, their hollow eyes filled with malice. "This is your final stop," one of them said. "Make it count." I don't remember how I got out of the town. All I remember is running, the whispers echoing in my ears. I didn't stop until I reached my car, where I collapsed onto the seat, gasping for air. The next morning, I was back in the diner, nursing another cup of coffee. The locals watched me with knowing eyes, but no one said a word. I tried to tell them what had happened, but they just shook their heads. "Black Hollow isn't for the living," one of them said. "Consider yourself lucky." I never went back to Black Hollow. I couldn't. The memory of the figures, the whispers, the altar, it was too much. But I know the town is still there, waiting for its next victim. Every now and then, I hear the hum. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but it's there. And every time I pass a deserted town, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see the figures watching me from the shadows. The vanishing town is out there, somewhere. And it's hungry.